after the election is high. It happens during every election cycle. And in an interview on the Hugh Hewitt show that aired this morning, former President Donald Trump criticized Vice President Kamala Harris for her policies on the southern border and suggested that migrants had bad genes. He said, when you look at the things that she proposes, they're so far off, she has no clue. How about allowing people to come to an open border, 13,000 of which were murderers? He said, referring to the vice president's immigration proposals, all of which is false. Important to note. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis won't even take phone calls from VP Harris about the storm recovery just over a week after Hurricane Helene hammered parts of his state of Florida. Sources very close to the governor said that he is dodging the Democratic presidential nominee's calls because he says they, quote unquote, seem political. Now, he says Kamala was trying to reach out and we didn't answer. He said that very proudly that he's not talking to the vice president about much needed hurricane aid for his own state. And the president, that is Joe Biden, and First Lady Jill Biden paid tribute to the victims of the October 7 attack on Israel with a candlelight ceremony at the White House. The first couple was joined by Rabbi Aaron Alexander of Adas Israel congregation, who spoke for the duration of the very short ceremony, first leading a prayer of remembrance in Hebrew before reciting it in English. And it is the last day. It is the last day to register to vote for the November election in these states. That's Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee, and Texas. Eligible voters should be checking their registration status on their state's websites. And women, we make up roughly half of U.S. labor union membership, but representation in top-level union leadership positions has lagged, even in female-dominated industries, and that lag has been particularly prominent for women of color. But Black and Latina women are starting to gain some grounds, landing top positions at some of the biggest unions in the U.S. That is translated into wins at the bargaining table that focus more attention on family-friendly benefits like parental leave and healthcare coverage, as well as protections against sexual harassment. And Republicans backing Donald Trump are threatening Deloitte, one of the country's largest consulting firms, that is one of the federal government's largest business partners. Now, these Republicans are threatening Deloitte with the loss of billions of dollars in contracts because an employee of Deloitte shared messages from 2020 in which J.D. Vance, now the GOP vice presidential nominee, criticized the then president's record, then president being Donald Trump's record. On September 27, Donald Trump Jr. exposed the employee's name and photograph to millions of people on social media, writing, maybe it's time for the GOP to end Deloitte's taxpayer-funded gravy train. Others, including Vance's chief spokespersons and a Republican senator, circulated Donald Trump Jr.'s comments, and the conservative website Breitbart published a story naming the man and highlighting his job. And former President Trump's campaign proposals, according to experts, would add more than twice as much to the national debt as the proposal of Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, this is according to new research from these experts that came out today. Though both candidates' policies would lead to trillions of dollars in new borrowing if implemented. Now, Trump has called for extending his 2017 tax cuts, which would add more than $5 trillion over 10 years to the U.S. $35.7 trillion national debt. His plan to end taxes on overtime, wages, Social Security benefits, and tips would add another $3.6 trillion in debt. And his call for a nationwide campaign to detain and deport undocumented immigrants would cost the country $350 billion. These economists, in short, are saying Donald Trump would be bad for the economy. That's the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in Real Time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm joined by Dr. Carlos Hill. He's an author of The Murder of Emmett Till and a professor at the University of Oklahoma. Also joining me in this hour is Richard Green. He is a Democratic and communication strategist. And in hour two, we're going to be talking to the man behind efforts to memorialize enslaved people, enslaved ancestors. On November 2nd, something very special is happening. A dedication ceremony will be held in Waterbury, Connecticut, to honor a new mural for a formerly enslaved man named Fortune. Now, this mural will depict the legacy of Fortune's memory, celebrating influential individuals in the 50-year history of that community. Fortune was a formerly enslaved man in Connecticut who was enslaved to Dr. Preserve Porter. After Fortune's untimely death in 1798, his bones were used by his enslaver, yes, that doctor, his enslaver, to open a school for teaching anatomy. Many generations of Dr. Porter's family, the enslaver, became doctors, learning using the enslaved bones of Fortune as their guinea pigs, as ways for them to experiment as they were learning to practice medicine. Now, in the 1930s, the bones were donated to a museum where they hung on display for over 4 decades. In the 1990s, universities started to study Mr. Fortune's bones, and eventually they were laid to rest at a cemetery in Waterbury, Connecticut in 2013. Now, this mural pays tribute to Mr. Fortune and his wife and their 4 children. The likeness is based on the structure of his skull, so it actually resembles how he looked. We're going to be talking to the man who started a nonprofit, who has done the extensive research, and who is spearheading these efforts to pay tribute to this enslaved man named Fortune. We'll talk about not only his efforts, but efforts around the country to bury the remains of enslaved people, to dig up graves and of enslaved people so that they can be identified, to put grave markers on the graves of individuals that have been enslaved. This is really, really important work, and is coinciding with efforts around the country to address years, decades, centuries of racism and discrimination that grew out of chattel slavery. So as we're talking about reparations, as we're talking about reparative justice, there are people around this country who are working to honor the legacy and the memories of enslaved people. So stick around for hour 2. We're going to talk about what's happening in Connecticut and around the country to recognize the individuals, so many who were enslaved in this country. But here's what I'm thinking about in real time before I bring on my guests. We have lost another icon, another great musical great passed away. That's Cissy Houston. She is a renowned, or was, she passed away today, but she was a renowned soul and gospel singer. And if you don't know her because of her own work, her own music, and her own talent, you will most definitely recognize Cissy Houston as the mother to the beloved, the iconic Whitney Houston. Cissy Houston is dead today at the age of 91 years old. Again, the mother of the much beloved, iconic singer, performer, Whitney Houston. But Miss Cissy Houston was a 2-time Grammy Award winner herself. Many people didn't know that Whitney Houston came from an incredibly talented musical family. Her mom won her own Grammys. Her mom also used to sing backup for Aretha Franklin, and get this, even Elvis Presley. She was instrumental, as you can imagine, very instrumental, very influential in the life of her daughter. She had a 7-decade career in music and entertainment. She made tremendous contributions to pop music, so many different genres of music. Imagine being a backup singer for the mother of soul, Aretha Franklin, or the queen of soul, and then Elvis Presley, to be able to sing in so many different genres. She again, taught her daughter, taught the world, taught so many other musical geniuses so much about the music industry, about performing. Of course, she was a grandmother to Whitney's late daughter, Bobby Christina. She leaves behind a host of family members, including her daughter-in-law, Pat Houston. She was surrounded apparently by her family because she was in hospice care because she apparently had Alzheimer's disease. But Cissy Houston was born in New Jersey. Fortunately, she died in her home in New Jersey. She got her start in the entertainment industry as a member of a gospel group called Drinkard 4, that is. And she later formed her own group called Sweet Inspirations. She used to sing with Dee Dee Warwick and Doris Troy. They also sang backup for Otis Redding. And you, of course, will recognize the name of Dionne Warwick. She also sang and performed with Dionne Warwick. They were part of a group and sang backup on Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girls. They also sang backup to Jimi Hendrix. Again, the group's final show was in 1969, singing alongside Elvis Presley in Las Vegas. Cissy Houston, obviously a part of many popular backup groups and singing backup music, but she had her own solo career. She was a solo musician as well. Her debut album came out in 1970, and it was called Presenting Cissy Houston. She followed that by a string of records over the years, including one of her songs in 2012 called Walk On by Faith. Again, she just sang backup on hundreds and hundreds of recordings. She also sang backup for Bette Midler. She was on the song The Divine Miss M and Aretha Franklin's very popular song Ain't No Way. Throughout her career, her vocals could be heard on songs made by Chaka Khan, Diana Ross, David Bowie, even Beyonce. Yes, she sang on songs recorded by Beyonce, Donny Hathaway, Wilson Pickett, and the list just goes on and on and on. Our hearts and prayers are with Cissy Houston's family. Thank you, Lord, for sending such an angel to this earth, for gracing us with her musical talent for 7 decades. And thank you, Cissy, for birthing Whitney Houston and pouring so much into Whitney, because she also blessed us for many, many decades with her incredible voice and her incredible talents. Again, Cissy Houston, 2-time Grammy Award-winning singer, is dead at the age of 91. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA. Stay with us.
To Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king.
King C. Gillette knows you're dedicated to your barbershop routine, but how do you maintain the beard hair you already have? The King C. Gillette Beard Thickener helps to reduce patchiness and strengthens hair's resilience to breakage. Apply the King C. Gillette Beard Thickener daily to see a thicker and fuller beard in just 14 days. It's highly scented with King C. Gillette's signature scent. Just trim, wash, and soften. With King C. Gillette.
You can do it all by yourself, baby girl. What's your name? Let me talk to you. Let me buy you a drink.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and in this hour, we are breaking down today's trending news with Dr. Carlos Hill and Richard Green. Thank you both for joining me in this hour. And in hour two, we're going to be talking about how we memorialize enslaved people whose lives in this country meant nothing, obviously, to their enslavers, whose bodies were even used for experiments after they were dead. Very tragic story in Connecticut, but one with a good ending, as one activist decided that he was going to recognize an enslaved person by the name of Fortune. So we're going to be talking about his journey to learning about Mr. Fortune, and then this unveiling of this very important piece of public art that will happen on November 2nd. So make sure you stick around for hour two. All right, lots of news today, Professor Hill, starting with Georgia. The Supreme Court says these oppressive abortion bans. There was a brief reprieve in the state for women and body autonomy, but today the Supreme Court of Georgia reinstating this 6-week abortion ban. It appears that everyone in this country, well, at least the majority, I shouldn't say everyone, majority of people in this country recognize that women and body autonomy is something that the majority of the country desires, yet we keep seeing these Supreme Courts or these legislators in Republican and red states institute these very oppressive bans. And now we're about, less than 30 days out from the election. What impact might this have on Georgia voters?
Areva, I really believe, well, first of all, thank you, Areva, for always having me on. And thank you for that beautiful tribute to Sissy. That was wonderful. Right now, we're in the middle of the most intense presidential campaign we've seen. And no one is holding punches. The parties and the candidates know the stakes. And unfortunately, abortion is the wedge issue in our country. There's a lot of wedge issues, but none like this. Because despite what you've said, the country sees this as an issue that we've decided. We still have states like Georgia using it as a wedge issue in this moment to try to capture as many votes as they can in the lead up to. This is how I understand it. There may be another way of understanding it, but I do see it as trying every bit to secure and to polarize. The key is to polarize so that any votes that may not go the way that you think, they will be more assured if you can drive this issue down the field. And so I see it as the ultimate wedge issue. I hope it doesn't work, though.
Yeah, lots of conversations about the abortion issue. Richard Harris and her team have been talking about it almost on every stump speech that they give. And one thing, since I have you, Richard, I know you're a communication specialist, I know you're tracking tonight the 60-minute interview that Kamala Harris is doing. Donald Trump was invited to participate in the interview with the 60-minute journalist anchors, and he declined. It's 1 month away from this election. Kamala Harris has been getting a lot of flack from legacy media about not doing sufficient interviews, but now she is not only meeting with 60 Minutes, she's done a ton of podcast interviews, including doing an interview with Howard Stern. What do you make of Donald Trump turning down an interview with 60 Minutes?
First of all, I have to say, I did not know about Whitney Houston's mother. And it just reinforces, I think, a life lesson for us parents. And that is, if you're good at something, share it with your child, because it seems like the extraordinary people in sports and music and whatever start super young. And, Whitney, obviously an unbelievable talent. First of all, I have to say that I think what the Georgia Supreme Court did was very helpful to generating turnout in Georgia for us. So hopefully we can create a national right to reproductive rights and restoration of Roe v. Wade, and not have to worry about every darn state in the South and across the country who wants to do that. With respect to—
Well, hold on, before you go to the other topic, I want to stay there for a minute, Richard, because something happened last couple of days. Melania Trump, apparently there's some video online with her talking about body autonomy and seemingly suggesting that women should have, rights over their body. And someone asked me, did I think Melania, first of all, was that a real video versus something, created by artificial intelligence? But assuming it was real, assuming she has made this kind of comment in the book that she's written and maybe on this video, they said, Areva, do you think this was a way, kind of an underhanded, tricky, deceitful way for Donald Trump to speak to women, to say, well, or for women, to send a message to women? I kind of coded like, well, if Melania is saying this, I'm going to be more in line with her than what I've had to say on the campaign because of the Christian right. I don't know, it's kind of a convoluted little theory, but what do you make of that?
No, it was one of the first things I thought of. I would not put anything past Donald Trump. He is the greatest demagogue, con man, grifter in modern history, if not forever. And it's so brilliant that he gets to say to the Christian evangelical MAGA right, I'm with you on abortion, but I can't control my wife, and have her go and soften his image and lend credence to his saying, well, I'm really not sure. I'm even let my wife talk about what she wants to talk about. And she is fully in the camp of all you women who want your reproductive rights back. So I think it was totally strategic. I mean, listen, we know who Melania is. She's a contract player. I'll say it that way.
Well, we know that she demands $250,000 to give interviews or to do speaking events, even when they are campaign-related events. And apparently, even when they are interviews that might involve her promoting her book, which is unheard of for most authors, and obviously the spouses of candidates. The second gentleman isn't getting paid. Gwen Walls isn't getting paid to show up at fundraisers or to show up at campaign events for.
No, they're grifters. They're grifters to their core. I mean, they can't not grift. And listen, I just have to do a shout out. Speaking of podcasts and Kamala, I just saw my buddy Matt Barnes, All the Smoke interview in DC with Kamala Harris. That is exactly what she should be doing, sitting down with influential people of all shapes, sizes, colors, demographics, and being real. And the thing as a communication strategist, I have to say about Kamala, she's very good when she's giving a prepared speech. Her DNC speech, I thought, was fantastic. She's very good when she's prepared for a debate. I thought her debate performance against Donald Trump was outstanding. But she's not great in a news interview. She, I think, just is trying to be too careful. And so she loses her natural warmth and personality. But when she's sitting down in a conversation and like on The View or any sort of like sit down chatting with friends, she's fantastic. And she needs to do 5 of those every day.
Well,
You
to
agree,
that
Carlos?
point,
I saw you moving your head.
well, go ahead, Carlos, weigh in on that.
No, I agree. I mean, she has charisma. She connects with people. She actually likes people. That's something interesting for a politician. She actually likes people. So, yes, she should continue to do that. But I think what she needs to absolutely do is to hammer home that she actually wants to govern. We don't hear governing from J.D. Vance or Trump. She is talking about governing and what she's going to do. That's the difference, I think. Not just that she has charisma, but she actually is going to govern.
Yeah, when we come forward, I want to talk about this interview she did with 60 Minutes. And as you said, Richard, you saw on that Matt Barnes podcast, she is making the rounds. She's doing The View on ABC. She's doing Howard Stern's radio show, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Jimmy Kimmel is going to have Tim Walz. And she's doing a host of other podcasts and interviews to address some of those issues that folks have kind of attacked her on in terms of not being willing to sit down with journalists to talk about what impact that might have as we get to the 30-day mark in this election cycle. Stay with us, KBLA Talk.
You got to have her do the Areva Martin show.
When we come forward, more on that.
More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. The Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. is endorsing Republican Bob Fioretti in the Cook County, Illinois state's attorney race. Jackson said Fioretti has championed the African-American community for many years as an advocate, a civil rights lawyer, an alderman, and a friend. The former Chicago alderman is set to face Democratic nominee Eileen O'Neill Burke in the November election. Even as New York City Mayor Eric Adams sees his support eroding among everyday New Yorkers, U.S. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries says the mayor should not resign despite his recent indictment on federal corruption charges. He says Adams, who is Black, is entitled to the presumption of innocence in a trial by jury. But at the same time, Jeffries, who is also Black, says Adams needs to articulate a, quote, path forward to ensure that the city is continuing to function and run in a manner that meets the needs of everyday New Yorkers, end quote. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Have a crash in Compton on the northbound side of the 710 right before Alondra. That's now on that right-hand shoulder. A crash completely clear, though, through Gardena off the 110 northbound at Redondo Beach Boulevard. You're still slowing down about Sepulveda Boulevard, but that should start picking up some speed. A crash moved to the shoulder in Pacoima off the 118 eastbound at Glen Oaks, and no longer blocking lanes, and delays still just slight as you hit Sepulveda Boulevard. A crash in Fullerton on the 57 southbound after Orange Thorpes on that right-hand shoulder, and a crash in Tustin on the 5 northbound just before Tustin Ranch. That is on also the right-hand shoulder.
If your supply chain demands a flexible workforce, hire with Express Employment Professionals. With contract and full-time workers from Express Employment, you get the staff you need and manage contingent labor costs. Learn more at expresspros.com. That's expresspros.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Magic Johnson's NFL team, the Washington Commanders, are 4-1 for the first time since 2008. The Commanders continue to be the talk of the NFL with a 4-game winning streak and the outstanding play of rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. Daniels has completed 77% of his passes and ranks 4th in the NFL with a 106.1 quarterback rating. Magic became a part owner of the Commanders last summer. The Rams' 1-4 start is their worst start under coach Sean McVay. McVay is in his 8th season with the Rams. The 6 home runs the San Diego Padres hit Sunday night were the most homers given up by the Dodgers in a postseason game in the Dodgers franchise history. USC's loss at Minnesota Saturday night knocked them out of the AP 25 college football rankings. USC was 11th before Saturday's game. The Trojans are 1-2 in their first year in the Big Ten Conference. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 congratulates Tavis Smiley on receiving the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award from President Joseph R. Biden Jr. for a lifelong commitment to using his media and philanthropic platforms to help build a stronger nation. A host of Tavis's family, friends, colleagues, and luminaries, including LA Mayor Karen Bass, joined in the celebration. KBLA Talk 1580 wishes to thank the following partners for their support: the Weingart Foundation, Avitor's Public Opinion Research, Waters Tax Service, LA Councilmember Heather Hutt, the Empowerment Congress, Wallace and Renee Fortuné, the IQ Air Foundation, Dr. Kenneth Arduna and Central Neighborhood Christian Health Clinics, LA County Supervisor Holly Mitchell, LA County Supervisor Janice Hahn, Ambassador Michael A. Lawson, Ambassador Charles R. Stiff, and Attorney John E. Sweeney. Congratulations, Tavis, on your Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
This truck season, think about all the things you can do in a Chevy truck. You can even just with impressive towing, incredible bed and tailgate functionality, and multiple powertrains. Chevy Silverado, the first ever Silverado EV, Colorado and Tahoe have what you need to get things done. When you want to do it all, Chevy's got you. It's Chevy truck season. Get 0% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together let's drive. 0% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 9.3%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 10/31/24.
Asthma Peak Week is almost here, September 15th through 21st, and it's time to pay attention. Peak Week is a critical time of the year for asthma flare-ups and can lead to hospitalization. Did you know that Black Americans are approximately 5 times more likely than white Americans to be hospitalized for asthma? Stay aware, have a plan, and spread the word on Asthma Peak Week. For more active asthma care tips, visit luma-edu.com. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
We are back, and Richard Green and Dr. Carlos Hill are joining me in this hour. And in hour 2, we're going to be talking to a nonprofit leader who is on a mission to ensure that enslaved people in the state of Connecticut, those who were enslaved in the state of Connecticut, that their legacy and that their life's work be remembered. We're going to talk about a very special unveiling and dedication ceremony that's going to happen on November 2nd in Waterbury, Connecticut. Make sure you stick around for hour 2. All right, Richard, this is probably news to your ears as a communications specialist. Kamala Harris began a media tour yesterday. She started with an episode of the Call Her Daddy podcast. She then went on to 60 Minutes. She did The View, again, Howard Stern, and Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and Tim Walz is doing Jimmy Kimmel. We talked about her on the Matt Barnes's podcast as well. Now, Donald Trump refused to appear for that 60 Minutes interview. This is a regular thing that 60 Minutes does with both Democratic and Republican candidates about a month away from the election. What do you make of Donald Trump turning away or refusing to participate in an interview with 60 Minutes, and how successful might this campaign media tour be with Kamala Harris, with being 30 days out?
Can I just say, Donald Trump talks a big game, but he is all bark and no bite. And all these people who think he's so strong, such an alpha male, he will not agree to a second debate with Kamala Harris. And he will not sit down with real journalists. And you're right about 60 Minutes. Remember, Bill Clinton and Hillary went on there, and it saved his campaign. But the stakes are very high on a real, super, professional news interview, and Donald Trump, he doesn't have anything. He doesn't know policy. He doesn't know details. J.D. Vance could do that, but Donald Trump can't. And he's afraid of embarrassing himself. So he's only going to do friendly stuff. With respect to Kamala is a substantive, incredibly qualified woman, and she can do anything. But I do think she, as I mentioned before, she's just not terribly comfortable in news interviews. And I saw little bits of the 60-minute interview, and I thought she was really solid. You know, she was being pushed on Netanyahu and Israel and all of that. These are very, very complex issues. And you know, you're going to not make everybody happy, but I think she looks professional, she looks presidential, and she sounds great. And I would absolutely mix those with the Howard Sterns and the Matt Barnes and the Areva Martin show, and to allow her warmth and just, I mean, the more you know about Kamala Harris, the more you love her. The more you know about Tim Walz, the more you love her. The more you know about those other people, the less you love them. So they have to be strategic.
Yeah, you know, that's such a great point, Richard. I was at an event with her sister, the VP, Sister Maya Harris, yesterday. And one of the things she encouraged folks like us who were in that room to do is to keep talking about her, the personal side of her that many of us know, because she made the statement that you made, which I think is so true. The more people learn about her, the more they like her. Versus in the case of Trump and Vance, they literally, Dr. Hill, are threatening, Republicans are threatening Deloitte, this mega consulting firm, saying we're going to pull our contracts from you, or have our clients pull our contracts because you allowed an employee to leak some communication that J.D. Vance had about Donald Trump. So it seems like all J.D. Vance is, he spends more time trying to cover up and trying to explain away comments he's made, you know, whether it's about childless cat ladies or calling Donald Trump America's Hitler. So now we know he made some negative comments in 2020 about Trump, and Republicans are on this massive effort is afoot to bury those comments and basically destroy this employee for just revealing what J.D. Vance said. So the more people know about Vance and Trump, the more they dislike them.
Absolutely. You know, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are running a bad campaign. They really are. And we're not calling it that because the polls suggest that the election is very close, and we can talk about the polls, but they're running a really bad campaign because they believe they have their base locked up and that they're going to get the 1 or 2 or whatever million votes that they believe that they need to win. And so they are acting as if they don't really need to do much, which is good. But at the same time, that's giving so much room for Kamala and Tim Walz to talk about real things, to actually be real people and actually get those votes that we need to get over the finish line. So I think that they believe that the election is decided. I think that's where it is. It's decided, and everybody is going to go and vote. They don't believe there's a lot of votes out there, and so they can just proceed. But I think that's a faulty assumption. These next 30 days are going to matter, and in particular, it's going to matter not so much the vote, like how we vote, but what we're going to do when there's a conflict. What are we going to do in a state like Arizona or Georgia? There's a conflict. What is the plan B? What's the plan C when the things that have when the plans, right, for blocking the certification happen? Like, that's where we need to be, and I think that's where they are.
No, and that's such a great point, Richard. As a lawyer, I mean, as lawyers, we can appreciate that this is not going to be an election that Donald Trump can likely win without a lot of cheating. And he's probably banking on this Supreme Court acting in a way very differently, perhaps, than before, if it comes down to, and it will come down to, we can probably predict lots of lawsuits being filed. He probably learned his lesson with bumbling, stumbling idiots like Rudy Giuliani. This time around, I suspect he will have a more sophisticated legal team if he can, find little old people to pay those legal bills for them. But what are you expecting? The Supreme Court is seemingly bracing for what could be a barrage of election-related lawsuits.
Well, I am still traumatized by the Bush v. Gore decision in 2000. I remember I was in New York City at the time when I saw the opinion, and I read it, and it was like I was so angry. I just wanted to scream. The Supreme Court, for those people who don't know, because we allowed it to be so close, that election, and Samuel Alito being on the Supreme Court and John Roberts being on the Supreme Court to be the two deciding votes to take women's reproductive rights away, was decided by 537 votes. And because it was so close, you run the risk of having the Supreme Court go partisan, which they did in 2000 because Sandra Day O'Connor was the swing 5-4 vote. We're now not that close. We've got 5 massive partisans on that Supreme Court who, when they wake up one morning and they have to make their decision, even though it's, as you know, as lawyers, we know the law is not the law. It's not like this is a cell phone, this is the law. The law is what you say it is. And
Right.
you're going to go, well, I kind of want the law to be this way. And we know it's never been done before, but there's all these issues in Georgia or Arizona or whatever, and we're going to give Donald Trump the presidency. I am petrified about that.
Well, you are so right. The law is not like an object, like a cell phone or a lamp or a table. We learned that lesson with the decision by the Supreme Court about immunity, how they stretched the contours of the law to make Donald Trump above the law, trying everything they could to not hold him accountable for January 6th. So there is a reason for all of us to be really, really concerned, which is why winning big, I've been saying that from day one, is the only alternative.
The only way.
A landslide victory. And we've seen it. Like we saw the so-called red wave. We saw during the midterm elections that we have the ability to win big, even though the polls don't suggest that that's, what's happening or it's on the landscape. But we've seen it with some of these abortion measures in even red states. So we know we can do it. It's just a question of, whether people have the sense of urgency about this election that, those of us on this show have and continue to have. When we come forward and talk about Donald Trump is continuing to make the most bizarre statements. Some of them are just downright unintelligible, but it seems to be baked into the equation, and we don't see this massive call for him to step down in the same way that we saw from editorial writers at the New York Times when Joe Biden had some missteps at that June debate. Stay with us. More of today's breaking and trending news when we come forward right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues? Who are you? Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
I occasionally have nerve discomfort in my hands, so the things I love to do
Let's play something, Grandma.
became difficult as I got older.
If you have occasional stabbing and burning in your hands and feet, try Nervive Nerve Relief. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use. Say yes to healthy nerves with Nervive Nerve Relief. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
Your vote matters. It helps you fight for the things you care about, like protecting Social Security and supporting family caregivers. Voters 50 and over are the most influential voting bloc. You have the power to make candidates focus on the issues you care about, so you need reliable information to make sure your voice is heard. AARP's election guide has the most up-to-date information about when, where, and how to vote. Get the facts at aarp.org/election guides. Paid for by AARP.
We're not just a thermometer recording and broadcasting popular opinion. We aim to be a thermostat, transforming the conversation about climate justice in our community. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has taken up going to the park to practice yoga. My dad's going to a club, but not a book club, a salsa club.
Finding new hobbies comes with age.
My mom has started getting lost and not knowing where she's going.
Becoming lost or disoriented doesn't. Confusion with time or place may be a sign of Alzheimer's. An early diagnosis can help improve the quality of life for your loved one. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association.
All right. It seems like, Carlos, Donald Trump it doesn't seem like it's actually happening. More and more incomprehensible statements, mixing up people's names, locations, country names, just rambling during 90 minutes, 120-minute speeches. I mean, the media is talking about it, but we're not seeing this like massive outcry. Like, this guy is not fit in the same way we saw when Joe Biden seemed to be slowing down at that debate. And there was all this talk about he's 81 and, he didn't have the stamina and the mental capacity to be president. Donald Trump is 78, not far off from what Joe Biden is. And he's doing, if not the same, worse in terms of some of his public speeches and appearances.
Yeah, I mean, Areva, I'm just trying to keep my black job. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to keep my black job. I mean, that is what Donald Trump said. That is the most racist thing that one can say, black jobs, and he's still a candidate. That is where we are in America. His unhingedness, his incoherence, his inability to actually know the facts does not matter. That is the net sum of Trumpism. Politics doesn't matter. It's about identity and white nationalism. That is why people aren't criticizing it, because at the same time, he's in support of white nationalism, which the party has embraced. And so that's why this election is so important. We have to push back against him because his party won't. And if his party embraces it and it becomes the law of the land, we are in real trouble. That's why this is an existential election. He's truly embraced what historian Richard Hofstadter said back in the 1950s, the paranoid style of politics. That is Trumpism.
No, really great point, because Richard, Trump is rambling, increasingly giving these angry speeches focused on the past. He alluded to the fact or suggested that there was an audience at the debate with Kamala Harris when we know there was none. He's indicated that North Korea is attempting to assassinate him when it's likely that he meant Iran. He misspeaks, he misremembers, and now this is all on top of line, things to such a degree that it's no longer, they say, appears to be garnering much attention. Like it's become such a part of his presentation that folks just kind of write it off as that's just Trump being Trump. But as Carlo said, being able to recite names of countries, knowing who's trying to assassinate you, these aren't like little bitty details. These are major details. And if someone's going to be leading a company, a private company, you surely wouldn't, endorse them for another contract if they're getting up before their shareholders or employees making speeches, rambling like that. It's just shocking to me how this media has treated Trump and his rambling and his cognitive decline, which is clear, versus Joe Biden.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, for those of us who have eyes to see this, it's incredibly clear that he is not qualified mentally, emotionally, spiritually, ethically, on any level, right? But I have to tell you, I had a very powerful conversation with a family member yesterday who is going to vote for him because he's such a good communicator in a certain way to certain kinds of people that they are inspired and empowered by him. And this person, a relative of mine, said, but I don't want wars. And Donald Trump on day one is going to get us out of these wars. And it's like, really?
And their basis for thinking that is what all this tough talk
he said so. He said so. Oh. And it's not, I mean, these are not only unsophisticated people. He has a degree, and there's a trick to this. Demagogues use this trick. He has never, ever, ever, ever admitted that he was wrong. And when you put that out there, people go, wow, I wish I was like that. He's not wrong about anything. Then he's not wrong about being able to end wars. But let me just say one thing, because we're at the 11th hour in Arizona, Georgia, Ohio, and Texas. And people still, if you live there and you're listening, or you have family members or friends who live in those states, once that registration deadline is over, it's over. And they can't wake up in a few weeks and go, you know what, I decided I want to vote. So get your relatives and friends in those states that have the deadline today to go online and to register. And then they're good to go and they can decide to vote or not, but at least they have the option. And then every week or so, we're going to have a whole bunch more states that are going to be cutting you off. And honestly, we lost the 2000 election by 537 votes. We won the 2020 election by 42,880 votes, including just 10,000 votes in Arizona. Every single vote counts. I mean, that's my mission between now and 4 weeks from tomorrow, is for people to understand, no BS, every single vote counts. And it could be the congressman that you elect or the senator that you elect in Arizona or Ohio or Texas could be the one that actually allows us to restore reproductive rights for women. It could come down to one congressman or one senator.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding folks. Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee, and Texas. All of these are states where voter registration ends today. So if you live in any of those states, or you have relatives, you live in California, but you have relatives in Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, any of these states, please, please, please call them and remind them, because we're comfortable in our blue state, but we are in a state that's a part of a country. So it doesn't do Californians any good for us to elect a Democratic legislature, governor, Congress people, Adam Schiff as our senator, Alex Padilla as our senator, and we still end up with a Donald Trump as our president. So we all have a role to play. Maya Harris reminded us about Michelle Obama at the DNC telling us to do something. Maya took it further and said, do everything. And so I appreciate what you said, Richard, about you're going to make it your mission to do everything in your power. And people sometimes think that they're not powerful, or think that because Maya gave the story of someone who says she wasn't a volunteer at one of the campaign offices, but she was bringing food to the folks doing phone banking. And Maya's like, no. You're a critical volunteer because your food and snacks that you're bringing will allow these workers to stay here and stay on these phones for an extra hour or two rather than having to go out to get food. So, I mean, you can take food, you can take soda or water or juice to a local campaign office. You can take donuts or cookies. You can phone bank from your home. You don't have to go anywhere. You can organize. She gave another example of a woman that the day Kamala Harris announced she was running, she moved the furniture out of her living room and set up long tables. And every weekend she hosts different groups of friends and family members to come in and they just phone bank. She provides them with the food and a nice, clean, and safe space in which to do it. So we all have friends, we all have relatives, we all have people we know that may be on the fence about voting, and we can all be the change that we want to see by encouraging and engaging those in our immediate circle to make sure they are registered and they get out to vote. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you so much, Professor Hill. Always a pleasure to be in conversation with both of you. When we come forward, we're going to be talking about a very special dedication to a formerly enslaved man by the name of Fortune in the state of Connecticut. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Areva.